Listen closely, my friends. There is a kind of silence that history almost erased, not because it was weak, but because it was too powerful for ordinary people to understand. Long before kingdoms collapsed and empires disappeared into dust, a handful of men discovered that the greatest victories were never won on battlefields. They were won in the invisible war between emotion and discipline, where a single unnecessary sentence could destroy what years of wisdom had built. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, yet the enemy he feared most never carried a sword. It spoke through anger, pride, impatience, and the irresistible urge to react. He knew that the moment another person could dictate your emotions, they no longer needed chains to make you a prisoner. They only needed your attention and your next careless word. Now think about your own life for a moment. How many nights have you replayed a conversation, wishing you had stayed silent instead of proving a point? How many relationships were damaged? How many opportunities disappeared, simply because you believed every situation demanded an immediate response? Most people spend years trying to control the world around them, while never learning to control the voice inside themselves. Modern life rewards speed. Speak first. Defend yourself. Explain your choices. Win every argument. But the Stoics understood something that our generation has almost forgotten. Every unnecessary reaction gives away a piece of your power, and every attempt to force people to understand you quietly places your peace in their hands. Today, you are about to walk through 10 moments that separate ordinary minds from unshakable ones. These are not communication tricks, and they are not motivational slogans. They are timeless principles forged through suffering, tested by philosophers, emperors, warriors, and men who refused to let the world decide who they would become. By the end of this journey, you will begin to notice something strange. The situations that once stole your peace will lose their grip. The people who once controlled your emotions will seem powerless, and the silence you once feared will become the greatest source of strength you have ever possessed. But before any of that can happen, you must first face the lesson that almost everyone fails. The moment when staying silent feels impossible, yet becomes the beginning of real power. Situation 1. Stay silent. When you are being tested, not attacked. The first lesson is the one that breaks almost everyone, because most people cannot tell the difference between an attack and a test. The moment someone challenges your pride, questions your intelligence, or throws a careless remark into the room, your instincts immediately prepare for battle. But what feels like an attack is often nothing more than life asking a single question. Can this person be controlled? Epictetus understood this better than most men ever will. Born into slavery, he learned that true freedom had nothing to do with locked doors or broken chains. A man became a prisoner the moment another person's words could dictate his emotions. That is why the Stoics believed your first reaction is never your greatest strength. It is your greatest vulnerability, waiting for someone else to exploit. Picture a mountain standing against a violent storm. The wind screams, the rain crashes, the thunder demands a response, yet the mountain never argues with the sky. It remains exactly where it belongs, because real strength does not prove itself by making the loudest sound. It proves itself by remaining unshaken when everything around it is trying to pull it apart. The next time someone tries to provoke you, don't rush to defend yourself. Watch instead. Notice who enjoys the conflict, who waits for your reaction, and who quietly loses respect for the person creating the chaos. While everyone else is speaking, you are collecting something far more valuable than the last word. You are collecting truth, and truth always reveals itself to the person who can remain silent long enough to see it. Most people believe silence means they have lost the moment. The Stoics saw the opposite. They knew that every second you refuse to react, you force the other person to carry the full weight of their own behavior. In that uncomfortable silence, masks begin to fall, intentions become visible, and people reveal a version of themselves they never intended you to see. Remember this, because it may change the way you walk into every difficult conversation for the rest of your life. The person who controls your emotions controls your decisions, and the person who controls your decisions quietly controls your future. That is why the greatest victory is not winning the argument. It is walking away with your peace still completely untouched. Situation 2. Stay silent when you feel the need to explain yourself. There is a quiet trap that catches even the strongest minds, and it rarely begins with fear. It begins with the desperate need to be understood. Someone questions your decision, doubts your path, or asks why you chose a life they would never have the courage to live. Without realizing it, you begin building a defense for a choice that was never on trial in the first place. Diogenes never wasted his life explaining himself to people who had already decided not to understand him. While others chased approval, he protected something far more valuable, his freedom. The Stoics believed that the moment your peace depends on another person's agreement, you have quietly handed them authority over a life that was never theirs to govern. Imagine an eagle soaring above a valley while voices rise from the ground below. The people argue about how high it should fly, where it should land, and whether its direction is right. Yet the eagle never circles back to defend its flight. It simply keeps climbing, because the sky has never asked permission from the earth before opening itself to those willing to rise. Every explanation invites another question. Every justification creates another opportunity for doubt. Before long, you are no longer protecting your decision. You are negotiating it. The people who were never going to walk your path suddenly begin shaping it with opinions born from fears they never overcame. That is how clarity slowly disappears beneath the weight of borrowed voices. The strongest people you will ever meet are rarely the ones who speak with the greatest confidence. They are the ones who no longer feel the need to convince anyone. Their certainty does not come from applause or approval. It comes from the quiet knowledge that some decisions are meant to be lived, not defended, and that results will always speak more convincingly than explanations ever can. So the next time someone demands an explanation you do not owe, resist the urge to fill the silence. Let your actions answer what your words never could, because the moment you stop asking the world to validate your choices, you begin walking with a kind of confidence that no criticism can ever take away. Situation 3. Stay silent. When grief has taken the words from your hands, there are wounds that language was never created to carry. One day, life will take something from you that no amount of logic can replace. A person you loved, a dream you built for years, or a version of yourself that quietly disappeared without saying goodbye. In those moments, the world will expect an explanation. It will ask if you're okay, what happened, how you're feeling. But some pain becomes smaller the moment you stop forcing it into words. Seneca once wrote that the deepest sorrows should be allowed to breathe in silence before they are exposed to the noise of the world. He understood that grief is not something to perform, it is something to survive. The strongest people are not the ones who speak bravely through heartbreak. They are the ones who sit alone with it, allowing the pain to shape them instead of rushing to escape it. Some transformations are so sacred that they can only happen where no one is watching. Picture an ancient forest after a wildfire. From the outside, everything appears lifeless. The trees are blackened, the ground is covered in ash, and silence hangs over the land like the end of a story. Yet, beneath that silence, unseen roots are already beginning their work. Long before the first green leaf appears, life has already chosen to return. Healing has always been invisible before it becomes visible. Most people fear silence because it forces them to meet themselves without distraction. They fill every empty space with conversations, music, endless scrolling, or the opinions of strangers, hoping the noise will drown out what still hurts inside. But pain that is constantly interrupted never truly leaves. It simply waits. The Stoics believed that every avoided emotion returns stronger, until you finally become brave enough to sit with it instead of running from it. Viktor Frankl walked through unimaginable darkness and discovered a truth that still echoes today. Everything can be taken from a person except the freedom to choose who they become in response to suffering. That choice is never made in the middle of applause. It is made in the quiet hours when no one sees your tears, your doubts, or the battle taking place inside your own mind. Character is not built in public. It is forged in silence. So, if life has broken something inside you, resist the urge to explain your pain to people who could never carry its weight. Let silence become your shelter instead of your prison. Because one day the world will look at your strength and wonder how you recovered, never realizing that your greatest healing began in the moments when you stopped speaking and finally listened to the part of yourself that suffering had been trying to awaken all along. Situation 4. Stay silent around people who cannot understand you. There comes a point in every meaningful life when you realize that not every room deserves your voice. You walk in carrying years of discipline, sacrifice, and hard-earned wisdom, only to find yourself surrounded by people who measure depth with the same eyes they use to judge appearances. Your first instinct is to explain yourself, to make them understand who you really are. But the moment you begin shrinking your mind to fit someone else's limits, you stop expressing yourself, and you start erasing yourself. Diogenes knew this loneliness better than almost anyone in history. He carried a lantern through the streets of Athens in broad daylight, claiming he was searching for an honest man. Most people laughed. Some mocked him. Almost none understood what he was trying to reveal. Yet he never chased the crowd for acceptance, because he understood a timeless truth. Wisdom loses its power the moment it begins begging for permission to exist. Imagine a lighthouse standing alone on a violent coastline while waves crash against the rocks below. It never sails into the ocean pleading for every passing ship to notice its light. It simply stands, unwavering through every storm, knowing that the ships searching for direction will always find it. The ones drifting blindly into darkness were never looking toward the light in the first place. One of the most exhausting battles you will ever fight is trying to convince people to see a version of you they have already decided does not exist. No explanation will change a mind committed to misunderstanding you. In fact, the more desperately you explain yourself, the more invisible your truth becomes. Some people do not misunderstand you because you failed to communicate. They misunderstand you because accepting your growth would force them to question the comfort of their own limitations. Marcus Aurelius never believed that every mind could be reached by reason. He knew that some people are so committed to their own story that they will twist every word you speak until it fits the version of you they have already created. That is why the Stoics protected their energy with silence. Not because they had nothing to say, but because they refused to waste truth on ears that had already chosen illusion. Remember this for the rest of your life. You were never born to be understood by everyone. Diamonds are not judged by those who cannot recognize their value, and mountains never lower themselves to convince the valley of their height. The day you stop chasing understanding from the wrong people is the day your silence begins carrying more weight than your words ever could. That is the moment you stop seeking an audience and start becoming unforgettable. Situation 5. Stay silent. When revenge is sitting right in front of you. There is a dangerous moment that arrives after you've been betrayed, humiliated, or deeply wounded. Suddenly, the opportunity you've been waiting for appears. You finally have the words, the evidence, the power to make them feel exactly what they made you feel. Your heart tells you this is justice. Your ego calls it closure. But the Stoics saw something almost no one else could. The greatest danger was never the person who hurt you. It was the person you were about to become in response. Cato the Younger understood this with frightening clarity. His enemies lied about him, conspired against him, and tried to destroy everything he stood for. Yet he refused to fight dishonesty with dishonesty, because he believed the moment you borrow the character of your enemy, you have already surrendered the battle. Victory achieved by becoming the very thing you despise is not victory. It is defeat wearing the mask of success. Imagine holding a burning piece of coal, waiting for the perfect moment to throw it at someone who wronged you. The longer you hold it, the hotter it becomes. Long before it ever reaches the other person, it has already burned the hand refusing to let go. Revenge works the same way. It promises relief tomorrow, while quietly destroying your peace today. Every second you carry it, it owns a little more of your future. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is not to become like the one who caused your suffering. Those words are deeper than they first appear. The person who betrayed you can only steal your peace once, but resentment steals it every morning you wake up remembering them. Every quiet night you replay the past, and every dream you postpone, because your energy remains chained to someone who has already moved on. One day, life will give you the chance to answer cruelty with cruelty. In that moment, almost everyone will expect you to strike back. But the strongest people rarely announce their revenge, because they no longer need it. They become so disciplined, so peaceful, and so impossible to break that their entire existence becomes proof that the wound never destroyed them. Nothing unsettles your enemies more than discovering they no longer occupy a single room inside your mind. So when revenge finally stands within reach, close enough to taste, choose something far more terrifying than retaliation. Choose indifference. Choose growth. Choose a future so meaningful that the people who once tried to break you slowly disappear into a chapter you no longer feel the need to reopen, because the highest form of victory has never been making someone else suffer. It has always been becoming someone that suffering could never conquer. Situation 6. Stay silent about your plans until they have become reality. There is a quiet mistake that has buried more dreams than failure ever could. It happens the moment you announce a vision before it has grown strong enough to survive the world. You tell people about the business you are building, the body you are creating, the life you are determined to live, believing their excitement will fuel your journey. But what feels like encouragement often becomes the first crack in your discipline, because the applause arrives long before the achievement ever does. The Stoics understood a truth that modern psychology would only confirm centuries later. The human mind cannot always distinguish between being praised for a goal and actually accomplishing it. The moment others admire your ambition, your brain rewards you as if part of the work has already been finished. Hunger begins to fade. Urgency slowly disappears. Before long, the dream that once kept you awake at night is quietly replaced by the comfort of talking about it instead of building it. Picture a seed buried beneath the earth. It does not fight its way toward the surface on the first morning. It remains hidden in complete darkness, growing roots no one can see. The world above mistakes that silence for emptiness, never realizing that the most important part of its growth is happening where no applause can reach it. If the seed forced itself into the sunlight before its roots were ready, the first strong wind would tear it from the ground without mercy. Most people are not trying to destroy your dream. They destroy it without even knowing they are doing it. Some will project their fears onto your future because they never escaped their own. Others will laugh because your courage reminds them of the risks they were too afraid to take. Even those who genuinely love you may ask you to stay safe, not realizing that safety has buried more extraordinary lives than failure ever has. The moment you expose an unfinished vision, you invite unfinished minds to shape it with their limitations. Epictetus once reminded his students that sheep do not announce how much grass they have eaten. They remain quiet, and in time they produce wool. That is how real transformation works. It does not introduce itself with promises. It arrives unexpectedly, leaving people wondering where your strength came from, while never seeing the years of invisible discipline that created it. Results have a language that words will never be able to imitate. So protect your ambitions like a flame in the middle of a storm. Let your discipline grow in silence while the world assumes nothing is happening. Then one day, when your work can no longer be ignored, you won't need to explain what you were building. Your life will speak with a certainty so undeniable that every doubt, every opinion, and every prediction made against you will disappear beneath the weight of what you quietly became. Situation 7. Stay silent. When success begins to change you. The 7th lesson is the most dangerous of them all, because it never announces itself as a danger. It arrives disguised as success. It whispers to you after every achievement, urging you to tell the story, post the victory, seek the applause, and collect the admiration. At first, it feels harmless, but slowly, without realizing it, your life stops being something you live and becomes something you perform. The tragedy is that the louder your audience grows, the quieter your soul becomes. Seneca warned that the man who depends on the applause of others will never know lasting peace, because applause is a hunger that can never be satisfied. The moment your happiness depends on being noticed, your freedom quietly disappears. Every compliment becomes a drug. Every criticism becomes a wound. Every silence from the world begins to feel like rejection. Without knowing it, you have handed strangers the keys to your emotional life. Imagine a lion walking alone through the wilderness at sunrise. It does not roar to remind the forest who it is. It does not chase the approval of the animals watching from a distance. Its presence speaks long before its voice ever does. That is why the strongest people you will ever meet rarely feel the need to announce their strength. They have discovered that true power is not something you display. It is something that becomes impossible to ignore. The modern world has convinced millions of people that visibility is the same as value. They measure their lives by views, likes, compliments, and recognition, forgetting that the tallest trees in the forest spent years growing where no one could see them. Everything extraordinary begins in obscurity. The people who change history are rarely the ones asking the world to look at them. They are too busy becoming someone worth remembering. Marcus Aurelius filled thousands of pages with thoughts that transformed generations, yet he never intended anyone to read them. His journal was never written for an audience. It was written to conquer the only person he believed truly needed conquering, himself. That is why his words still live, while the names of countless men who chased attention have disappeared into silence. History remembers those who mastered themselves, not those who mastered performance. So before you speak, ask yourself one question that may change the rest of your life. Am I sharing this to serve the truth or to feed my ego? If the answer is your ego, let silence answer instead. Because the rarest people in this world are not the loudest, the most admired, or the most celebrated. They are the ones whose character has become so deep, so unshakable, and so quietly powerful that their very presence says everything their words no longer need to. That is the silence the Stoics left behind, and the silence that can still transform a life today. Situation 8. Stay silent when success begins to change you. The 8th lesson is one that almost no one sees coming because it doesn't arrive with failure. It arrives with success. The moment life finally rewards your discipline, people begin to notice your name, your work, your confidence, and your progress. That is the exact moment your greatest battle begins, not against jealousy, not against criticism, but against the quiet voice inside you that whispers, "Make sure they know who you have become." Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning that fame is nothing more than the opinion of people who will soon disappear, just as he would one day disappear. He ruled an empire, yet he constantly warned himself against believing his own importance, because he understood a dangerous truth. The ego never destroys a man while he is climbing. It waits patiently until he reaches the top, then convinces him that he no longer needs humility to stay there. Imagine a towering oak tree in the middle of a storm. The taller it grows, the deeper its roots must reach into the earth. If it spends all its strength growing upward while neglecting what lies beneath, the very height that made it beautiful becomes the reason it falls. Success works the same way. The higher life lifts you, the quieter your character must become, or your own pride will accomplish what your enemies never could. History is filled with brilliant people who were never defeated by competition. They were defeated by admiration. The applause became louder than their purpose. They stopped listening, stopped learning, stopped questioning themselves, because they believed success had made them untouchable. But the Stoics believed the day you think you have nothing left to learn is the day your decline has already begun, even if the world is still cheering your name. The wisest people become quieter as they become greater. They let their work speak while they continue sharpening the part of themselves no audience will ever see. They know that reputation can be taken away overnight, but character cannot. That is why they protect their inner world more carefully than their public image, because one creates the other, never the opposite. So when success finally finds you, and one day it will, resist the temptation to announce your greatness. Let gratitude speak louder than pride, and let humility become the invisible force that protects everything you have built. Because the strongest souls are not remembered for how loudly they celebrated their victories. They are remembered for how quietly they carried them. Situation 9. Stay silent when someone is determined to misunderstand you. There is a painful truth that most people spend their entire lives refusing to accept. Not everyone wants to understand you. Some people have already written a story about who you are, and no amount of honesty will persuade them to change the ending. They will twist your kindness into weakness, your confidence into arrogance, and your silence into guilt. The more desperately you try to correct them, the deeper you become trapped inside a battle that was never yours to fight. Epictetus taught that if someone speaks badly of you, do not waste your energy defending a reputation that exists only inside another person's mind. Their opinion belongs to them, not to you. The Stoics understood that you cannot control the stories people choose to believe. You can only control whether you sacrifice your peace trying to rewrite them. The need to be understood by everyone is one of the heaviest chains a person can wear. Imagine standing before a perfectly still lake while someone throws mud into the water. If you immediately jump in to clear it with your hands, the water only becomes darker. But if you simply leave it alone, the mud slowly settles to the bottom on its own, and the surface becomes clear again. Truth behaves the same way. It rarely needs your panic. It only needs your patience. Most people destroy themselves trying to protect an image that was never real. They answer every accusation, explain every rumor, and chase every misunderstanding until they forget the person they were trying to protect in the first place. The strongest minds understand that time exposes character more honestly than arguments ever can. A lie can travel quickly, but it can never walk forever beside the truth. Remember this whenever someone refuses to see you clearly. Your responsibility is not to control another person's perception. Your responsibility is to become so consistent, so disciplined, and so deeply rooted in your values that eventually reality speaks louder than every false opinion ever could. The people meant to see your character will see it without explanation. The rest were never your audience. One day you will realize that peace begins the moment you stop trying to live inside other people's thoughts. Let them misunderstand you if they must. Let them doubt you if they choose. Because the greatest freedom is not convincing the world who you are. It is becoming so certain of yourself that you no longer need the world to agree. Situation 10. Stay silent when life is delaying what you prayed for. The final lesson is perhaps the hardest of them all, because it demands silence not from your mouth, but from your soul. There will come a season when you do everything right, yet nothing seems to move. You work while others succeed before you. You remain disciplined while doors continue to close. You begin asking the same painful question that has broken countless hearts before yours. If I'm on the right path, why is nothing happening? The Stoics believed that nature never rushes, yet everything arrives exactly when it is ready. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that time is not working against you, it is working on you. The delay you call failure may be preparing the character your future will demand. Because receiving success before becoming worthy of carrying it has destroyed more lives than waiting ever has. Imagine a sculptor standing before a block of marble. Every strike of the hammer looks like destruction to someone who cannot see the finished statue. Pieces fall away. Dust fills the air. Nothing appears to be improving. Yet with every blow, the masterpiece comes closer to existence. Life shapes us the same way. What feels like loss is often the removal of everything that could never become part of who you are meant to be. Most people abandon their purpose not because they lack talent, but because they mistake silence for rejection. They expect constant signs, immediate rewards, and visible progress. When those things fail to appear, they conclude that life has forgotten them. But the greatest transformations happen underground, where no applause exists and no evidence can be seen. The roots grow long before the tree touches the sky. One day, you will look back on the season that tested your patience more than your strength, and you will understand why every delay mattered. The closed doors protected you, the unanswered prayers redirected you, the waiting refined you. What once felt like life refusing to bless you was actually life refusing to give you less than what you were capable of becoming. So when the world grows quiet and your future seems hidden behind unanswered questions, resist the urge to panic. Stay faithful to the work no one applauds. Stay committed when no one is watching, because sometimes the deepest silence is not proof that life has abandoned you. It is proof that something greater is still being prepared beyond everything you can see. Silence is not the absence of strength. It is the place where strength is born. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, peace over pride, and wisdom over noise, you become the kind of person the Stoics spent their lives trying to create. The world will always reward those who speak the loudest for a moment, but history remembers those who mastered themselves for a lifetime. So the next time life gives you the choice between reacting and remaining silent, remember this: sometimes the most powerful thing you will ever say is nothing at all.